What is going on, guys? Today I'm going to take you through my exact protocol when it comes to using intermittent fasting to get shredded. So the time is currently about 5:45 a.m. Got up at 5:30, just sipping on some electrolytes. We've got an SAS tablet, and then we've got about 10 milliliters cider vinegar. This is generally how I like to start my day, and then I'm going to go and do half an hour of fasting cardio, which you might have seen in my last video when I showed you a full day meeting. But specifically today, I want to talk you through why I'm a massive fan of intermittent fasting and why it can work really well for fat loss, actually make the process a lot easier as well. I'm going to go through my exact protocol of how I conduct my fast, how I break my fast, and why fasting can be really effective. So it's going to be a lot of value that I'm going to unpack today. Obviously, the first thing I do when I get out of bed is I hydrate myself. This is super important when you're fasting, because if you don't hydrate yourself, you're going to feel like shit. You're going to feel groggy. You're going to be hungry. You're going to have no energy. You need to hydrate yourself. It's super important, especially when you live in a climate and it's like 30 degrees and it's like 5 in the morning. Maybe that's a bit of a over exaggeration, but it is extremely hot considering it is very early still. But I mean, look, God, check this out. This is absolute baller. It's insane, right? Insane view. So can't complain. This is probably the only time in the day at the moment where it is actually bearable to be outside. So anyway, first thing I do, electrolytes, apple cider vinegar, bit of a bad product, but I'm rocking with it anyway. I'm taking it ever since I started this cut. Seems to be doing pretty well. And since I started this cut, I am so far 5 kilos down, which is a lot for me considering I didn't start out of shape or overweight. I still had abs at the start of this. I've just got more defined abs now. So anyway, probably got about 2 more weeks left of this cut, and then I'm going to go into some performance phase. Probably box off a little photo shoot, which is what me and Matt have decided. So back to the fasting approach. Electrolytes, apple cider vinegar, gets me hydrated, gives me energy, and then I always go and box off 30 minutes of cardio, which I'm about to go and do now. Probably just going to go and do 30 minutes on the incline, walk again, get back up here, have a shower. Then it's generally pretty boring. I want to take the time to actually explain to you today a few little things about fasting. So let me get into the cardio. So the good thing about when you come and do your cardio this early in the morning is basically the entire gym to yourself. So there is no one here. Sometimes you get the early birds that come in here as well. It's quite surprising really, as normally you'd expect a few people to be training this time. However, there are 2 gyms in my building. So there's the cardio gym, which is also what I'm in, and there's also the weights room, which is next door. So you do get quite a lot of people in the weights room. 30 minutes on the treadmill, and this has been a bit of a staple in my routine. Ever since I started this cut, I started at about 20 minutes cardio, then I went to 25 minutes, and now I'm at 30 minutes. And I probably won't go past 30 minutes. I haven't needed to really go past 30 minutes of cardio when I've previously cut to get as lean as possible. I also do a lot of steps as well. This generally works pretty well for me. Sometimes I go for a run in the morning as well, so kind of alternate between running and incline walking. Reason number 1 why I'm a big fan of fasting, why it can work really well, is simply because it just gives you less time to consume calories. And when we cut, we want to almost create rules and boundaries that make it easier to follow. And if we can specifically tell ourselves that we can't eat until certain times, it can make sticking to it a lot easier. So like myself, I know that I won't eat my first meal until 12 o'clock, which means I stick to that. And if I then only eat my food between 12 and 8, that's 8 hours where I can eat bigger meals and enjoy myself. And generally, I don't get hungry until I've eaten my first meal. Like, I could eat in the morning, but I still control myself. You know, I can drink water, I'll show you, I'll have coffees, all this kind of stuff, which generally just puts eating off. And then, you know, I feel like I've earned my first meal at 12 o'clock. And then I only really then get hungry after then for the next kind of hours past 12 o'clock, which isn't too bad when you've got more calories to eat in that time frame. So that's the first reason why fasting can work. It creates rules, creates boundaries, and it's something that's easy for anyone to stick to. You can just choose times to eat, and you don't then just end up eating when, you know, it's kind of unnecessary anyway. And finish off my 30 minutes. My arm is actually aching from holding this camera up. We got a while to go. So I normally like to just do, I listen to the podcast or a YouTube video that's educational. So not only am I getting my 30 minutes of cardio in, which makes me feel a lot better, getting some exercise in to start the day, but I'm educating the mind as well. I'm learning every day about something that's valuable to me. It's going to help me level up in a specific area. So I partner leveling up my health and my body and exercising, with leveling up my mind, my knowledge, my execution, my business, and my life, and my knowledge as well. So let's get to it. So I showered, got off some work. Now I'm going to talk to you guys a few tips on the fasting aspect. So we've obviously got Matt here as well, King Faster as well, like myself. So we're going to run you guys through exactly a few methods in terms of how to make fasting easier. Also maybe when to use fasting, when not to use fasting. Got a trusted whiteboard here. Don't know how clear this is in the background, but obviously going to talk you through these points anyway. To start off with, we're going to give you some examples of when you can use fasting in your situation, and when maybe it's not a good idea to use fasting. And then we're going to give you some tips. So we'll start off with when it is a good idea to use fasting, just from our own experience, okay, from what we know. The first time of fasting can be really effective, or the first situation is if you are in a desk job or you have a job that doesn't require you to be really active. You know, maybe your job is very much about thinking, maybe you're running a business, or you just buy a laptop and you don't necessarily need to be doing physical output. I think that fasting can work really well because actually you can think a lot clearer and you don't necessarily have the need for food. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. And I think it just, if you're in a job as well where you sort of have a manage your own workload and stuff, you can just crack on with stuff in the morning and your mind is distracted. Obviously that'll bring us into one of our points later on, but yeah, I think definitely being busy just takes your mind off food.
That's the first time I think it can work. Number two, which is a good point that Matt made, if you get hungry later on, so you can elaborate maybe a little bit on that one.
Yeah, so obviously I know some people just genuinely don't feel that hungry in the morning. They sort of they struggle to eat breakfast in some instances. Some people just are really not breakfast people. So if that's the case, then why would you put calories into your body if you're not hungry? Like when you're dieting, you kind of just want to eat when hungry, right? So that's when fasting works really well for people that just generally are not that hungry in the morning and kind of eat breakfast because they sold this lie that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Then don't do it.
And if you have a tendency to get very hungry when you get later on in the day and you're, watching TV, and if you've saved a lot of your calories, then fasting can work very well in terms of you've got bigger meals in which you can have, which takes us nicely onto point number 3. If you enjoy eating bigger meals and you want to sit there and, I don't know, maybe like 800 calories as opposed to having 400 calories because you're having less meals, can work well because you can actually enjoy the meal. You can get kind of more full from eating that meal. So if you enjoy just eating more food in one meal, then again, I think fasting can work really well. Typically, I'd say that's what me and Matt like to do. Instead of like spreading it out across the day, just eating smaller meals, which don't necessarily fill us up as much and we don't always enjoy. If you like big meals, again, it's a good thing to do. And the last point is if you're not a massive breakfast person, which is Matt's already touched on, not everyone massively enjoys breakfast. Sometimes it's just faffing around in the morning. It's, somewhat a bit of a waste of time just getting your food and stuff. And if you just want to be productive, if you want to go out the door, you want to get on with your day, get on with work, then I sometimes don't think you need to eat. So fasting can be really effective. So that's when fasting can be used. Okay. Now we're going to go into maybe some of the times where fasting isn't maybe as recommended. So potentially is something to consider if you fall into one of these brackets. So starting off, Matt, you can talk through this one because I know Matt used to be a shift worker for a long time being in the police. So that is the first point you made. Shift work, maybe fasting's not the best tool to use for fat loss.
Where I'm kind of mainly going with shift workers is probably like, police, fire, ambulance, doctors, nurses, that kind of thing. I think that the problem is with those jobs is that you just don't, to make fasting successful, again, we'll come into this point later, but I think you've got to be quite structured with it. And I think sometimes with those jobs, you're not guaranteed, you don't know when your lunch is. Every day is different. And I think that if that's the case of your lifestyle and you don't have a set lunch, you don't have a set break times and things like that, I think fasting can be a bad thing. I tried it in the police and it was fucking chaotic because, you go to a job and then if you've not eaten anything all day, then you get stuck at a job, say from 12 till the rest of your shift. You'll go in like ridiculous amounts of hours without eating, and then that can lead, you get home and you binge, or you can have problems. So I don't recommend it for that. And then obviously also with shift workers, if you're working like very late at night or like you're working later on in the evening, if you fast all day and then you just literally you get to work and you'll just sat eating all shift, it's probably not a good idea. So I would say if you do shift work, I think you can still take elements of fasting, find what works for you, find an eating window that works for you, but I wouldn't necessarily do this.
Yeah. Then we go into point number 2, when maybe not to fast, would be if you do suffer from binge eating or you have some sort of eating disorder. I'm not going to go too much on the eating disorders one because that's going to be maybe more dependent on that situation in terms of the eating disorder you suffer from. But in terms of binge eating, if you're restricting massively in the morning and then you don't know how to break your fast, or you have a tendency to binge, then
probably not a good idea, because you can effectively eat back all the calories that you would have fasted, in that one meal, and actually just end up being really hungry and probably do more damage than actually the fast that you were looking to try and do. So again, it's something that you can try, but I would recommend potentially avoiding that until you can come away from the kind of binge restrict cycle. Like, I know when I used to have a bit of a binge eating problem when I competed, fasting probably wouldn't have been a good tool, because I would have got way too hungry and I would have just been craving food all morning. And then I probably would have ended up binging and eating like 2,000-3,000 calories and just setting myself back massively. So it's probably not what I'd recommend. I think you have to be able to really control food and not get too obsessed around food, I think is probably the best way of putting it.
So you've got to break the fast quite tactically, but again, we'll cover that.
That's very true. Yeah. You have to kind of have an idea of what you're going to eat in that first meal. We will get onto that. Number 3, you enjoy eating in the morning. And that is, for some people, what a lot of people like to do. Like, I know that our mum, for example, she'd never be able to fast. She loves her breakfast. She always has that first thing in the morning. And I think that's the same for a lot of people. You don't have to fast. Like, you can eat your breakfast. It's absolutely fine. It depends what works for you. If you enjoy a breakfast, you like eating first thing in the morning, it sets you for the day, you don't have to fast. So it's another time I probably wouldn't recommend fasting. And yeah, would you agree with that as well? If you just enjoy.
When we say breakfast, by the way, we're talking about in terms of timings rather than the actual meal. Like, if you enjoy breakfast foods, of course, you can still have them, because, why you can still eat oats at lunch. I do. Like, I eat oats all day. So
very true.
When we talk about breakfast, we mean like if you enjoy that first thing. Well, like, some people really look forward. It's part of their routine. Yeah. Use mum, for example, again, takes the dog for a walk, comes back, she eats her breakfast, and that's part of her routine. So if that works, then do it. Like,
And then the last bracket, and this is where a lot of our clients fall into this, so we wouldn't recommend fasting to them. And that's if you've got a high energy demanding job. So manual labor, I think you mentioned if you're like an athlete as well. So if you're a hybrid athlete or something like that, like you go for a lot of running or whatever, probably wouldn't recommend fasting in that instance as well. Like, if you've got a job, maybe you're on a building site, you need the calories. You're most likely going to need to get some carbohydrates down. You need the energy. So I probably wouldn't say fasting is a great idea. There maybe is a caveat to that. If you feel like you can still respond well from being fasted and use caffeine, like, that could be something you can try. But I'd say for most people, if you've got a job that is demanding and you are moving around a lot, you probably wouldn't want to fast.
Or the military. Don't fast.
Yeah. See, Matt's probably got more experience in being in a higher demand. I suppose when I PT, but I never fasted when I was personal training. But it's a bit different because you're still kind of stood around. You just counted people's reps.
If you're watching this and you're in military training, do not fast. You will faint.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
So there's Matt's advice on that one. So I think, generally, if you've got a job that requires a lot of output physically, fasting, probably not the best of ideas. So that's the kind of when and when not to. And again, this is just mine and Matt's opinion. You might fall into a bracket as to where it still works or it doesn't work. And I think fasting is something you probably agree with me, is that you have to try it. Like, you have to try it for enough time and then decide as to whether it's going to work for you. Give it a chance, like anything, and you're going to know whether it works. And, you can use elements of fasting potentially as well.
Probably takes 2 weeks to adjust.
Yeah, I'd say it does.
At least.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
100%. But it does become part of something that you genuinely kind of can stick to quite comfortably. We've been doing it for a while now, and it just feels like it's part of our days. So onto some tips when it comes to fasting. So these are just things, again, that me and Matt think are important in terms of making the fasting process easier, okay, or making it feeling like it's less difficult to manage. So point number 1, have structure and routine. So the thing with this one, you just want to make sure you've kind of planned out your fast in terms of, like, you don't want to just go into it kind of not really knowing what time you're going to eat your food or what food you're going to have. Like with anything, any dieting approach, you need to be planned and need to have structure. But I think with fasting, it's important. Like, me and Matt know roughly what times we eat. We know roughly what foods we're going to be eating at what point during the day. We've been shopping. We've got the supplementation in place as well. We'll probably get onto that in a second. We just have structure there. We're not just saying, we're just going to randomly eat food at set time. Like, we've got it all laid out nicely. And I think that routine and that structure is really important, especially in the morning as well, having that in place too. The second point, which is, I think you said about having this more of a set window, which is kind of similar to the first point, but you can elaborate a little bit on that one.
Well, yeah, it kind of links into the first point, really. But I think by sticking to a window, I think for 2 reasons. A, you obviously want to break the fast at the right time. And I think B, you want to work backwards and you want to make sure that you're having your last meal, because you're typically eating larger meals. Again, we've both experienced, you don't want to have a massive meal right before bed because it does destroy your sleep. Like, we've experimented recently on the 1 meal a day approach. We watched a YouTube with GSP. I need
GSP, yeah. Just on this rest day.
Yeah, so we gave it a try. And I'm happy to say did not work for me.
Yeah.
Going to bed on an absolutely rammed full stomach. It was sleep was diabolical.
Awful.
Yeah.
Absolutely awful. I mean, yeah, like Matt said, the only time that would work potentially is if you eat a lot earlier. And or maybe if you're on holiday as well. So when we used it when we were traveling, we were eating massive meals and it was okay.
But that's exactly why you want to plan the window.
Plan it out.
Because you want to make sure if that's what you're going to do, or even if you can have a large meal, you want to make sure that that's not right before bed. If you're eating at 9 o'clock and then you go to bed at 10, it's terrible.
Yeah, one, you can't sleep literally for hours because your food is digesting your stomach's digesting an entire day's worth of food. And then the next day you feel awful, like really, really groggy, crap sleep. So yeah, that's something that based again on from what Matt said, having routine and the structure and having the set windows can make a massive difference. And typically it is going to be about 16-8. That is obviously a quite used
common one
approach. Yeah. For us, for me, it's eat about 12 and then cut off at about 8. So pretty much is the same kind of window, which works well. Point number 3, keep hydrated and also use caffeine. So this is really important because you want to make sure that you have energy. You want to make sure you stay full. You want to make sure that you can basically prolong the fast as comfortably as you can. And if you don't hydrate yourself, and you could probably get away with it without caffeine depending on the person. But if you don't, I think it makes it a lot harder. And that's in using things like electrolytes as well, because just drinking water, and that doesn't necessarily hydrate you. We need to get the sodium in. We need to actually have electrolytes on board as well.
You're not getting it for food.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
you're not getting it from food. So that's using an electrolyte supplement. I know Matt uses essentially amino acids that have electrolytes inside of it.
Yeah,
in the morning.
Prefer the taste.
Yeah.
Or an SSU mantra.
Yeah.
That's fucking sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Using electrolytes is super important. I think regardless as to whether you're fasting, if you're training first thing, you've got to be getting some electrolytes on board. And then I think you don't need to go mad with the caffeine, but a couple of coffees, a couple of black coffees, or pre-workout, whatever, it can definitely help. I mean, caffeine is a great stimulant, and it does obviously help kind of hinder your appetite a little bit, and it's effective for being in the fastest state. So I definitely would be using caffeine as a way of blunting your appetite and making the fast a bit easier, giving you a bit more energy. And it has a thermogenic effect as well, which is good. Number 4, obviously you mentioned about keeping busy. I think that is important. You don't want to just be sat there twiddling your thumbs waiting for it to hit 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
Otherwise it just becomes a bit of a struggle as well. So you want to make sure that you've got tasks, if that's with work, making sure you've got your day laid out, and of course staying active as well, going and getting your steps in, doing cardio. Training is absolutely fine fasted. Me and Matt do it. I would actually recommend that because you get your session done and then you can go and eat and break your fast afterwards. So potentially that's something to explore as well. But keeping busy, I think, is super important. And then the last point, which I think, going back to what Matt said previously, is talking about what we break the fast with. Now, this is really important because if you break fast with the wrong food, this is what can lead to you binging, potentially getting more hungry and actually doing all the harm and needing all the calories back that you would have saved, which obviously we don't want to do. So we've both experimented, and we would say that the best thing to break your fast with is a high protein meal, of course, and also a high fat meal, and probably go easy on the carbs. You don't have to completely cut the carbs off, but you want to go quite easy probably on the amount of carbs that you consume, typically because you don't want to have a massive increase of insulin blood sugar, because that's essentially going to lead to a massive crash and actually lead to you getting more hungry as well. So we don't want to set that off. We'd actually want to keep in a lower, more controlled insulin state, which is going to come from typically eating high protein, high fat foods. And high fat foods as well will slow down the digestion of that meal and actually keep you fuller for longer. So you want to have something like that that's going to keep you better appetite rather than going for a higher carb meal. I think I broke my fast with oats before, and I think it's not particularly worked that well because I've been super hungry afterwards. That's something to consider as well. And typically you want to try and take, I'd say, more time eating that meal as well to try and slow down a little bit, because it takes about 20 minutes for you to actually start to feel full as well. So you don't want to ram it down in 2 minutes, which I've been guilty of doing as well. Anyway, you would agree with that? Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I've got one more thing that I just thought of actually whilst we were doing this video. Make sure you don't neglect micronutrients and quality of food.
Yeah.
Because something that a lot of people do with fasting, because you have a lot more calories to play with, if you break your fast and you've got 2,000 calories to have in 8 hours, people have the tendency to opt for more calorific food because it's easier to fit into your macros. And it's important that you don't derive from quality. So you still need to make sure that you're getting your fruit and veg in, your micros. You still want to get good quality foods in. I think quite often people take this IIF, YM, if it fits your macros approach. And like I said, because you've got the extra calories to have in your meals, it opens up more options. So obviously you could probably potentially fit slightly dirtier foods into your diet and stay on track. But you don't want to do this because, it's not going to promote good health.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you will probably still get hungry as well, like Chris said, with insulin and things like that. So
Yeah.
don't derive from quality. Still make sure that you're getting quality in, just have it in higher volumes.
Yeah.
So
100%.
yeah.
There we have it, guys. There's fasting broken down by the Wright brothers at the moment. We've had a lot of great effect off using it. We're about 2 weeks left of our cut, and we're both very happy with the progress that we've made. And it is the approach that we have used consistently and had great results off. So it's worked for us. It's not to say it's definitely going to work for you, but potentially something to give a try anyway. And hopefully you can use these points to make your fast easier. So anyway, guys, I'm going to cut the video off here. Any questions at all about fasting, please drop them below in the comments and I'll get back to them. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. There's going to be a lot more content coming out soon. Make sure you hit the bell notification so you're notified next time post, which will be this weekend. And I'll catch you guys in the next video.